You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
Dolphins versus everyone.
Good morning, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the Dolphins versus Everyone podcast here on the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I am your host, Mike Oliva, and I am very happy to be joined today by Paul Esden, the digital reporter for the New York Jets at theheavy.com. Also, you can hear him on the Man-Child Show with Boyd Green on 1260 The Score in Syracuse. And he's also the host of the Jet Zone podcast. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, and by the way, this is quite a production. I love this. I love the entire video intro and everything. I was getting pumped up. I was getting hyped up, and I know it
almost made you a Dolphins fan.
It almost didn't, but I will tell you this: that it wasn't shown in the video montage, but it just harkens me back to the good old days when the Jets and Dolphins, when that rivalry was juiced up. When we had so much skin in the game. Now recently, there just hasn't been that same flavor there because both the Jets and Dolphins haven't been great at the same time, and really not a lot of great anyway in the 21st century, at least. So I want that back, and the Tyreek Hill juice and a couple other things this offseason have spiced some things up, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it has been a while since those two teams have sort of been relevant at the same time. We've all sort of. We have to live through the Patriots, but I think they have sort of fallen off a cliff. And I know some fans are still skeptical. There's no reason to be afraid of the Patriots no more. The Bills, we're going to be living through them for a few years. They are, Look, as much as I hate the Bills, I'm sure you're not a fan of the Bills. The Bills are a very good team. Give them their due. They're a very good team. But I think Miami and the Jets, all joking aside, are on the way up. I think right now Miami's a little bit ahead of them. Understandable. But I think both teams are at least on an uptick up, and hopefully in a few years they'll have some meaningful, relevant games again, because those games were fun when you had Marino versus O'Brien back in the 80s going up and down the field, 40, 50 points. But it's been a long time. Too long.
It's just been too long.
It has been too long. First question for you. Now, I believe two things can be true at the same time. Number one, the Jets have improved their roster, and they have improved the talent level on their roster. That's true, I think, even to someone who hates the Jets. The other thing I think is true is looking at their schedule, they're going to have a horrible 2022 season because I don't see their first winnable game. Honestly, they might have a couple against Pittsburgh or even Miami. You want to say they have an outside shot, that's fine. November 27th is when that really starts to lighten up their schedule. Up until then, that's a brutal schedule.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to try to aggressively push back there. And I'll tell you this, because, I claim to be both and this is a really cool thing about just me. I don't know every guest that joins your show. So I am my day job on top of my sports talk radio is I'm the New York Jets digital reporter. So I am an objective reporter for a website. That's one of my jobs. But to be honest, how I got into that job is I'm a diehard New York Jets fan, and I just kind of mixed the two together. But I don't try to use the fandom to blind me, and everything is peaches. I think as a fan, and I think you can speak to this and others, that we know the team better than anyone, so I can be more critical than anyone because I know all the weaknesses. I know the strengths. So I think that kind of helps me in my reporter status. So going to the schedule and looking at it with both lens on, I said, sure, it looks tough, but I'm like, man, I evaluate the schedule as for their quarterbacks. That's how I see it. So to me, how good or bad the schedule is what quarterbacks are playing. So we don't know what's going to happen with the Deshaun Watson thing, but to me, I think it's more likely than not, based on everything, that we're getting Jacoby Brissett week 2. I get the Browns defense is really good, but Jacoby Brissett, okay, that one looks pretty good. Week 4 on the road, and those are both on the road, by the way. But week 4, you got Mitchell Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. Doesn't scare me. So that, to me, is another game. And then I'm not going to throw them out, but obviously the two that are incredibly difficult in that first 4 we haven't addressed is Baltimore week 1. Obviously, it's almost the worst mismatch on paper the Jets could possibly have. They were terrible against the run. Lamar Jackson Ravens are the best against the run. So that doesn't look great. But if I was ever going to play the Ravens, I'd much rather have 4 months to prepare and see if this Jets defensive coaching staff is as good as they think they are. You go to the Bengals, the Jets C team beat the Bengals last year, so they won't be scared going into that one. I'm sure the Bengals are going to be pissed going into that one to try to prove that was some sort of fluke win that a lot of people think it is. So, when I look at it, I think it really comes down to, and conveniently on the Dolphins podcast, is the 2 home divisional games before the bye week. You have the Dolphins and you have New England. Those are the 2 games. The Jets, fun fact, I know Dolphins fans enjoy this one. The Jets are 0-12 in the gosh darn division over the last 2 years. Again, I don't even know how that's possible. How do you just go swept 2 years in a row by everyone? I mean, that's embarrassing. But the fact of the matter is, I understand why you or anybody would be like, well, if they're 0-12, I'm not giving them a lick of any chance to win in any of those games until they prove it. But those are the 2 heading into the bye week. Again, the Bills are I want to say impossible team. I mean, they are just so good. Look at every power ranking. 100%. They're the number 1 team in the league, considering to everyone. And the Dolphins, Jet fans can say what they want. The Dolphins have been kicking the Jets' patookie lately. So ultimately, I think for both teams, it comes down to the quarterback play. It's Tua. What is Tua? And what is Zach Wilson? I mean, that will tell us how good or bad the Dolphins and Jets are this year. But again, to push back on the initial kind of narrative here, yes, the Jets are more talented. Obviously, draft picks, free agency, they should be. And then the second part, to me, I think they're more winnable. There are teams that are going to be terrible, and there are teams that are going to be great that we didn't think so here in May. So I think that's going to change.
Injury. Absolutely. All it takes is one injury.
Sure.
And I don't think they're going to lose all those games, obviously. But I think, week 2 of the Browns, if there's no Watson, very winnable game. Yep. Pittsburgh, like you said, winnable. Miami games, because I'm like you. I work for the team, diehard fan as well. I have to look at things objectively.
Of course.
They played Miami twice last year, once with Flacco, and those games were both tied in the 4th quarter.
Right.
So It's not like it's impossible for the Jets to beat Miami. I mean, they were right there. Now, I do think Miami might have improved more this year, at least with even veterans, not so much with rookies. So that might maybe make the gap a little bit wider for this year. But okay, so there are some winnable games. And I don't know about you. Mac Jones does nothing for me. I know he gets a lot of media hype, and I know he made the playoffs last year. God bless him. I have no fear of Mac Jones. So, yeah, there are some games that are winnable. I just think this team might be improved, but still only win 5 games. And I think sometimes for fans, it's tough to say, we only won 5 games again. Yeah, but you are truly better than you were last year, and your future might be brighter. And I kind of see that's where the Jets are heading into this year.
I mean, here's the thing, the truth, okay, before they head into that bye. If the Jets really don't want to have the 5-win season that you're kind of choreographing here, then you have to, quote-unquote, survive, for lack of a better word, the first 9. You got to come into that bye week in week 10, which is perfectly placed, smack dab right there in the middle for them. You got to be 4-5, 5-4. And then everyone may roll their eyes when they hear that. There's no way. Well, look. Again, upsets happen, and of course, we mentioned all the quarterbacks that they could or could not be playing. If you survive and you're 500 or a game under 500, I'm not 8-1, I'm not talking something crazy. Then you go into that second half, and we mentioned all those teams: Bears, Lions, Jaguars, Lions, and all those other teams that are in that stretch. And all of a sudden, you go, "Wow, they could make a run in the second half." But what they don't want to do is make I think it was 2019. Yeah, it was 2019. Adam Gase's first year. Woo! Let's have an Adam Gase party on the podcast. So we had, Adam Gase, right? They were 1-7 to start the year. Then they were the second hottest team in football at 6-2. But of course, you looked at who they played, and then the season was over when you're 1-7. There's no way you're coming back, unless you're the Dolphins. A couple years ago, they did that with Brian Flores. Yeah. But they had that incredible, horrible start and then flipped. Yeah, so that's cool. But the point is that you can still make that flip and maybe make something happen, but you have to survive the first half for it to be possible.
Robert Saleh, put aside the wins last year because that was a horrible roster, and I don't know what they expected out of him. Robert Saleh. Going into year 2, where do you see him? Where do Jets fans sort of view him as a head coach? They have a lot of faith in him, because he reminds me a little bit like Flores in that he knows one side of the ball very well, and he's probably going to need help on the offensive side of the ball. And if he doesn't have the help, he ain't going to last long in New York, because it's an offensive league, and you need to have a strong offense. If you don't, you're just dead in the water. What are Jets fans' thoughts on Robert Saleh heading into year 2?
You choreographed that perfectly, Mike. I mean, that's it. Again, the great news is there was a lot of, I think 99% of Jet fans basically were happy with the Robert Saleh hire. He was an exciting hire. Nationally, he was praised as a guy that has been waiting as a possible head coaching candidate. So it was a very popular hire at first, but to your point, it's an offensive league. So we've seen defensive guys, Todd Bowles and others, where they come in and they know nothing about the offense, and then you're just blindly trusting whoever is on the offensive side of the ball. The good thing is that Saleh, as a package deal, no matter where he was going, was bringing either one of Mike LaFleur or Mike McDaniel, who now is your guys' head coach. That was the initial package that was coming over no matter what. So Jet fans felt pretty good. Like, okay, we got some offensive prodigy, whether the little brother of the Green Bay Packers head coach or Mike McDaniel, this swagalicious guy that we think has all this offensive mumbo jumbo. And again, for Mike LaFleur, so he ends up being the guy that comes over instead of Mike McDaniel. Mike LaFleur had never called a game before in his life. So Jet fans were a little cautiously optimistic, like, well, okay, let's see what's going to happen here. And there was a lot of struggles early. Now, was it Mike LaFleur's fault? Was it rookie quarterback? Was it crappy talent all over the place fault? I don't know. Maybe it was everything. But ultimately, I think Mike LaFleur found himself in the second half, and that's kind of natural of the season as he found out what he liked. The team got more comfortable, and now they added a ton of talent. I think they feel good about the offensive direction. And again, not to oversimplify it, but it will be Zach Wilson, how quickly he picks up the offense. He's doing all the right things. You know, he's traveling the countryside. He's going to tight end university in Nashville. So he'll be thrown around with Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez. That's kind of cool. That story just came out yesterday from the Pat McAfee show. So he's doing all the right things, but the proof will be in the pudding.
Yep. And this offseason, obviously, the way these two teams are kind of linked, sort of centered around the Tyreek Hill story. Yeah. Jets made an offer. Miami made an offer. And I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to no state income tax in Florida. Tyreek has family in Georgia, I believe, which is closer to Florida. And it's just more money in his pocket to go to Florida. Plus, the team's just a little bit, right now at least, they're just slightly ahead of the Jets, I would say. So they don't get Hill, the Jets, but there is talk about Deebo Samuel. And what the Jets had to part to possibly get him around the week of the draft. Do you think the Jets should have said the heck with it and go all in? Because if you get Samuel, he does change everything on that offense. Now, they did get a wide receiver there, I think it was pick 10 or so, who's probably very, very good player. Very good player. But you know what you're getting with Samuel, and you know how much he can change an offense. Did the Jets, should they have gone all in for Deebo Samuel? Because you guys had more than enough picks to where you still would have had extra picks.
Again, Joe Douglas has proven in his tenure that he will never overpay. And again, the Tyreek Hill package, which became so the Tyreek Hill thing came out of nowhere to the public, right? So like when we said, "Whoa, Tyreek Hill's available," I started freaking out. Then all of a sudden, Adam Schefter says, "Hey, the Jets are a finalist." I'm like, "What? In God's green earth, they're a finalist? Woo-hoo! Yeah, yippee-ki-yay!" I'm like, Tyreek Hill's like one of the best offensive playmakers in the NFL. Like, this is crazy. And then once that all kind of fell through. And then Schefter says, hey, here's what the Jets offered, 35, 38, 69. That's all their day two picks. So 2 second rounders and a third rounder. Basically, in every future Jets trade conversation, they were in on A.J. Brown. They were in on Calvin Ridley. Then we saw what happened there. They were in on Amari Cooper. They were in on Robert Woods. So many guys. They were in on a ton of guys as we were kind of progressing through this. And the package that was kind of default was, Tyreek Hill package. Like this, more or less, depending on the player, if they were perceived better or worse than Hill, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Deebo Samuel. To answer the question, I wanted them to go get an A.J. Brown. I wanted them to go get a Deebo Samuel. And for Tyreek Hill, at the time, right? Like live bullets are flying. We're just talking on social media. I was doing Tyreek Hill watch, refresh, and trying to talk to people and try to figure out what was going on. I was willing to go up the 10th overall pick. I'm like, let's do it. I mean, the impact that Tyreek Hill can have on the rest of the team. And again, what you mentioned already, they take Garrett Wilson, wide receiver, Ohio State, 10th overall. Everyone thinks he's pretty good. A lot of people thought he was the consensus number 1 receiver in this draft. But again, with a rookie and not knowing what he's going to be, to Tyreek Hill, you know exactly what he's going to be. That's the difference. And again, who knows how quickly Garrett Wilson will transition to an NFL offense. If he transitions Jamar Chase style, then obviously the Jets made the right choice. And he immediately is an impact playmaker in the NFL. But to me, I wanted them to go all in within reason. I didn't want them to trade, 10, 35, 69, and everything apparently the 49ers wanted. The Jets gave an offer. The Athletic, I think, leaked the initial offer, which was 10, and then they get back 61, which was the 49ers' first pick, and they also threw a fifth rounder, and apparently it was a quote-unquote insulting offer. But from what I understand, that was the Jets' initial offer, and they wanted the 49ers to play. Okay, give us a counter now. Now let's work. Again, you're never going to give your best offer at first, but it never got to that point because the 49ers just wanted to be blown away, not counter, and then they could kind of sell that to their fan base. Wow, this offer came out of nowhere. We had nothing to say. So I was willing to go all in within reason, but the 49ers weren't willing to dance.
Yeah, and that does make, because if I'm the Jets, like I said, Wilson might be fine, but we've seen a lot of wide receivers go early, and we've had one in Miami in Parker, who just never lived up to the hype. And we've seen some other guys. I think White there with the Bears never really lived up to the
White.
hype.
Oh,
Kevin
God,
White.
West Virginia.
It is a shot in the dark. And plus, this is also a league where you can get wide receivers in rounds 2, 3, and 4 who can come in and be productive. But when you're talking about guys like Brown and Samuel and Hill, they're special. They're just special players to which, but if San Francisco wasn't willing to play ball, there's only so much the Jets could do. Now, before we go further, Paul, we have to talk about our sponsor of today's show, which is Manscaped. Everyone go to manscaped.com, use the promo code Dolphins Talk, save 20% on your order, and get free shipping. With the price of inflation these days, why pay full price for shampoo, for body wash, lip balm, and all those supplies we all use in our everyday life? When you go to manscaped.com, save 20%, and they will also send it to your house for free. You don't even have to spend gas money to go to your local supermarket or anywhere. They will send it to your door for free. So everyone go to manscaped.com. Use the promo code Dolphins Talk, save 20% on your order, and get free shipping. Manscaped.com. Now, quarterbacks. You know it's a quarterbacks league.
Yes.
Zach Wilson last year started 13 games, 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 55% completion percentage. If Tua put up those numbers, he'd be raked over the coals, called a bust, and be thrown to the CFL. If that's even around anymore. I don't know if it's around.
Yes,
is this a make or break year for Zach Wilson? Because if this was Tua, they'd have the bus ticket ready to ride him out of town if he had those numbers in year one.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you give the overall numbers, it's gross. I want to go throw up in the trash can that I'm staring at over there. But it's really a tale of two halves of the season. The first, it's really pre-injury, post-injury, because Zach Wilson against the New England Patriots suffered a PCL strain that ultimately forced him to miss 4 games. And Zach Wilson bluntly was terrible, candidly. I mean, the New England game where he threw 4 picks on like his first 4 or 5 I mean, it was just awful. Like, what are you seeing, kid? And then he gets injured and he's forced to be out. He has no choice. He can't play. So he's forced to sit on the bench. And then post-injury, all of a sudden he saw all these other quarterbacks. And for better or for worse, he saw Josh Johnson, Joe Flacco, Mike White. He saw all these other quarterbacks operate the offense that had more experience than him as a human being, like more age experience in the world and football in general, kind of step in. And then he stepped in and he cut back on the turnovers. He was like up there with Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, and a bunch of others for like, over a 6-game stretch. He didn't throw a pick, which was great. Now, he didn't take as many shots, and that's the criticism people say on social media every time when they saw that stat. But it was just good to see him be understanding of how to protect the football and how important it is. Now, what ultimately Jet fans need to see in this make-or-break year, as you kind of laid it out, and I think it is for a lot of reasons, is that you souped up everything else. There's no Sam Darnold excuse, to go back to another failed Jets quarterback, which, by the way, I appreciate the 2nd, 4th, and 6th Carolina Panthers for that. Thank you very much. But with that being said, okay, Sam Darnold failed because of himself, as we're kind of seeing, because the Panthers have a ton of talent. He's obviously not taking advantage. But the excuse among Jet fans was, well, his offensive line isn't good. Well, his weapons aren't good enough. So, of course, he failed. The Jets couldn't leave that excuse out there in the ethos. So Joe Douglas said, F this, all right, offensive line rebuild. Tight end room, like a magic wand. If you show me the tight end room from last year to this year, I'd be like, I don't understand. Night and day. Don't understand. They're completely different. Like it was trash, like a trash bag full of rotten mangoes last year. I mean, it was disgusting. And then this year, you look at C.J. Uzomah, Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Ruckert. Like, it's just such an improvement level of talent. Your wide receivers are 4 deep. You got Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Braxton Berrios, who popped last year. So you're 4 deep there, 3 deep at tight end. And then Breece Hall, who, of course, they took at the top of day 2, and you add him with Michael Carter. The talent level is unbelievable. And Mike LaFleur is going into his second year. Zach Wilson's going into his second year. And the offensive line, Laken Tomlinson invested over $40 million in on the offensive line. And health will be a key part, Mekhi Becton and others of that nature. But just on the surface, on paper right now here in May, we look at the paper, we're like, wow, this offense is very solid. It's very solid at the skill positions. There's no weakness like that we could have picked out with Sam Darnold in the past, is the point. So to it, yes, this is make or break. There's a lot of pressure on Zach Wilson to say, hey, let's do this. But I'll also counterpoint on the pressure for Zach Wilson to say, with all that talent I just mentioned, I'll quote a line from the movie Spider-Man. Aunt May turns to old Peter Parker there, and she goes, "You're not Superman, you know." And that's it. Zach Wilson does not have to be Superman. He probably felt like he had to last year on that godforsaken offensive roster where he's like, turn the cap backwards, Colin Cowherd approved, and said, man, I got to go crazy here. I got to go buck wild because I got to start throwing some home runs. I feel the pressure, man. We're down 14-0. Our defense sucks. That's a New England game, I remember. 2 drives happen. He goes 3 and out, 3 and out. He's down 14-0. And then I imagine he has to say to himself, holy flying hoot, I got to now go crazy, and that's not what you want. So for me, I think Zach Wilson, quite frankly, with all the pressure that there is, that he has to perform well with all the talent, if you're just average and you have this offensive talent, you should be okay. I mean, we will see what okay means on the numbers, but man, running back room good, tight end room good, wide receivers, offensive line. You look at all that, and if he just takes what's there and an occasional shot, I think play action game will be very important because the Jets want to ground and pound. They want to go back to the trademark Rex Ryan days. They want to run the football, get everybody to sneak up, and then play action, vertical passing game. To maximize Zach Wilson's rocket launcher is surgically attached to his arm. Unlike Tua there, a little limp noodle there on that Tyreek Hill throw on social media. I saw that there from Dolphins fans. They were not taking that very well. But, I mean, that's the key for Zach Wilson, is that there is an immense amount of pressure, to your point, from the outside. But also on the same point, it's not pressure like you have to be Patrick Mahomes, but like to understand that you just have to play within yourself with the occasional pop. So a juiced-up version, basically, of how he ended the season.
And he doesn't even have pressure to win. He's just got pressure to play better.
Correct. Right.
2 in Miami, he needs to A, play better, and B, they better win or else they're running him out of town. Zach Wilson just needs to play better. If they lose, whatever. Because for him it's only year 2, and nobody really expects the Jets to make a run to the playoffs, especially in the AFC this year. When you look at the AFC, pretty much outside of the Jets, Houston, and I think there's one other team. Jacksonville. Like, every other team's got a shot at the playoffs. Those 3, I think, would be a long shot. So he just needs to play better. But those numbers last year, 9 touchdowns, 11 picks, 55% completion percentage. And for Miami fans who might have forgot, year 1 for Tua, 10 games, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 64%. 2021, 13 games, 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 68%. It could be worse, Dolphins fans, is my point. And yes, I think both of those guys last year had 0 help around them. 0. And I think in the case of Miami as well, they had a head coach who A, didn't like him, and B, just didn't care about offense. So he had that going against him too. But I think this year, both of those guys have more talent around them, and they should take a leap. I think they'll both take a larger leap than they have, well, at least for Tua in previous years. I think for Zach Wilson, I think we'll see from year 1 to year 2 where he goes. But they're both kind of in the same boat where they had nothing around them last year, and this year they got real teams around them on offense. Yes. And the bar's been raised for both. And it's a make or break year, I think, for both. Because in this league, it's not like years past where you give a guy 3, 4, 5 years. You got to know year 1 or 2 if he can play. And if not, we're moving on to somebody else. Because nobody's waiting around anymore.
Right. And the excuses are gone because, again, for Sam Darnold and why he lasted till year 3 is, again, there's a concept, well, we don't know. This year, So unless it's some, and again, knock on wood, we don't want injury, whether it's Dolphins, Jets, anything. I don't want injuries for anyone in the league. Yeah, I don't want injuries in the league. But, outside of something catastrophic where, you get injured week 2 and then you're out for a significant amount of time and then it's hard to evaluate from that standpoint, Like, yes, 100%. He's got to do something because there's no excuse. If he doesn't play well, it wasn't coaching, it wasn't this, it wasn't that. Like, what was it? So that will be the question we're asking ourselves. So 100%, we will see ultimately if he's able to maximize the talent around him. And I give Tua a lot of credit because obviously he's been made fun of a little bit on social media. And then basically the Dolphins open flirtations with Deshaun Watson, and then you're Tua, and he's just seemingly from the outside looking in has handled it the right way of just saying, hey, I'm just going to keep going back here and just doing my job. And now he's the guy. The Deshaun Watson thing didn't work out for whatever reason. And now he's the quarterback, and here's the talent. And now the expectation is, okay, Tua, let's see what you could do. He seemingly has overcome a lot.
Yeah, he really has. He's had to put up with a lot. We'll see if he can overcome it this year.
Right.
He's had to put up with a lot. A couple more questions. I'm going to let you go real quick. Heading into 2022, what's the Jets' biggest strength and what's their biggest weakness right now in May?
Wow, that's a great question. The biggest strength, I'm going to go to the thing that's supposed to be their biggest strength, and I will say the defensive line. Now, they said that last year, and obviously they didn't come through. Now, injuries, obviously, Carl Lawson, Vinny Curry, and so many others played a factor in that. They've not had a double-digit pass rusher since 2015. Again, I wish I didn't know some of these statistics off the top of my head, but unfortunately, the Jets have not been very good. There's a lot more than that, but we'll stay with the defense line. That's supposed to be the strength. Robert Saleh is not only a linebacker whisperer, but he's a defensive guru. So, okay, defensive guru, you added a lot of talent. You added the second most money of anyone on the defensive side of the ball this year. Let's play ball. Let's see what you can do with that. So the perceived strength for the New York Jets is certainly there on the defensive line. In terms of weakness, man, I think it could go in a lot of directions here. I guess I'll go to the rest of the team. There's a lot of hope for the secondary, but the other safety spot, unlike Miami Dolphins, who have Javon Holland and all these talented players back there, for the Jets, they've got one guy they really like, and Jordan Whitehead, who they just had in free agency. We'll see ultimately what he is. And their other safety is LaMarcus Joyner. He started 6 games over the last 2 years, and he tore his triceps last year, and right now he's the penciled-in starter. That doesn't really tickle me on that side of the ball. And then linebacker. The Jets, and this is where often we kind of get a rub, right? Where the team feels good about something that the outside doesn't. We're like, oh, that seems kind of questionable, but they're like, oh, yeah, we're good. C.J. Mosley, who's coming off a really good year, and then Quincy Williams, who is this waiver wire little brother of Quinnen. Now he's known around the league. They pick him up off waivers right before the start of the season, and he had a really solid year for himself. Again, it wasn't perfect. He could get often picked around in coverage, so that's something he's working on this offseason. But linebacker, again, with a team like the Dolphins that could do a lot of interesting things with like Mike Gesicki, and it's like tight end versus linebacker or vice versa, tight end versus smaller secondary player. He can either mismatch and be faster than you or bigger than you. So that's a part where, in this Dolphins lens specifically, that's somewhere where things can get a little questionable. So it is that second half of the defense. So there's a lot of talent, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, and a lot of talent they've brought in, but it's unknown. Let's see how they're going to perform. So the weakness would certainly be the rest of the defense, the back seven.
Yeah, I was looking at that secondary, and I would say that's probably the weakness because I think you can, if you're going to have success for the Jets, it's going to be in the air. And for the strength, I kind of like the running backs. I think that's a very good running back room. I think that's probably the strongest part of their offense, honestly. The offensive line's not bad either anymore. They sort of built that back up. But, yeah, so for the Jets. Now, one thing the fans of the Miami Dolphins and fans of the Jets have in common is our – I don't want to say hate. That's a little too strong – our dislike of Adam Gase. And when Adam Gase was in Miami, I often said, here's the thing with Adam Gase.
Yeah.
He had diarrhea of the mouth, but constipation of ideas. The guy was he wasn't any good. And I couldn't stand the guy. He just rubbed me the wrong way. So I'm going to give you a minute or two to say something bad about Adam Gase, because I know you probably have some thoughts on Adam Gase. The floor is yours.
Yeah. When he was fired by the Miami Dolphins, by the way, deserved, and the Jets happened to have an opening, I went on my podcast, The Jet Zone. I'm not kidding. We could go back in time and see it. I have the episode archived where as soon as we came up, Todd Bowles was fired. And then episode, I'm like, I don't give a flying hoot who the hell the Jets hire. They can hire my grandma. They can hire my mailman. I don't care. But there is one man please, and this before anything, there's no rumors, no nothing yet. It's fresh, right? The guy who gets fired, for the love of everything that's holy, hire Adam Gase. I don't want him. He was a reject from the division. How do you sell that to your fan base no matter what? Where, oh, the Dolphins got it wrong and he was in their building, but oh, really? We know. And then, so from that standpoint, and really just in general, you could pick apart the Adam Gase career. Like, wow, he gave Peyton Manning his best year. Peyton Manning, Pro Football Hall of Famer Peyton Manning?
Peyton Manning's the reason for all this mess. Hey,
yeah, exactly.
Peyton Manning is the reason for all this mess.
He gave the call to Woody Johnson. Oh,
he called our owner, too. He goes, you got to hire this guy. He's up and coming. He's calling Tannenbaum. He's calling Ross. You got to hire him. So, what is Miami? Hey, I'm going to call from Peyton Manning. He knows what he's talking about. I'm hiring this guy. Same thing with the Jets. He picks up the phone, calls the Jets owner. It's all Peyton Manning.
Bruises twice. See, again, he was going to be a Jet. Then he's like, I'm going to go back to Tennessee. And then he says, oh, that's not enough to horrify Jet fans for a long time. You know what? We're going to do it again and give a call. So everyone's celebrating the Manning casting. Wow, this is a great show. I'm like, it's terrible. Screw Peyton Manning. I've had enough of Peyton Manning in my life. So, yeah, I've got some ill will towards both Peyton Manning and the Adam Gase family. Like, come on, man. I mean, it was just god-awful. And again, to be so negative about a hire like Robert Saleh, which is the opposite, maybe it was just honeymoon. Basically anyone, I guess I would have celebrated coming off the Adam Gase era. But to be honest, like, to be so negative for a head coach before he's hired. And again, ultimately, whatever your feelings are, mine were very intense. I did not want Adam Gase. Ultimately, I'm like, let's give the guy a chance, okay? Because, like, what am I just going to be negative the entire time and just say, it's going to all be terrible? I don't want it to be terrible. I would hope I'm wrong and that he's great. But I'm going to be honest, I've never been so negative for a head coach to be fired. Like, no positivity. No, I'm like, this is a horrible hire. This is not going to go well. And, of course, ultimately it didn't. And, man, that is just a stain mark on both of our franchises. And thankfully,
he took Miami
it looks
to the
like
playoffs in year one. He did take them to the playoffs in year one, but it was between year 1 and 2. Like, his ego would have, like, just grew to a point where there was no talking to the guy. His way or the highway. Nobody else.
And the player thing. Jarvis Landry, who is that? Jay Ajayi. Who else?
Jay Ajayi ran him out. He ran everyone out. It was always someone else's fault. He fired every assistant coach every year because I'm not wrong. Mind you, you hired him.
Super condescending. Very condescending, yes.
Horrible guy. So Vegas right now is the Jets over under at 5.5 wins. Meaning if you're taking the over, they got to win 6. Would you bet the over? You bet the
I would.
I mean, it's not unreasonable. Here's why. If Watson's suspended, say you beat Cleveland, Seattle, Jacksonville, Bears, Lions, there's 4. Maybe a split with the Patriots or Miami. It's not impossible to get to 6. I think if you make that bet, though, until November, you're going to be like, I'm probably screwed. But come November, they got a chance to run off some wins here. I don't know. That might be one I avoid this year. I don't know. That's a tough one. That is a tough one at 5.5 because I think it's right there. I think the number's probably at 5 or 6. So you're really walking that fine line.
Yeah, I am, candidly, I am slamming the over. I am putting my deed to my house, pink slips, my new child, a daughter's turning, 4 months old in a couple months, her college education. I'm laying it all on the line over 5.5, and that's twofold. First off, the Jets, obviously, they've had in 10 of their last 11 seasons have been losing seasons. The only one that wasn't was the 10-6 year with Todd Bowles. So a lot of it is like, for God's sakes, I'm going to will it into existence. And the second thing is beyond believing. I think believing is half the battle. The second thing is I truly believe it, to be honest with you. When you mention all this second half, again, Bears, they did nothing for Justin Fields, that poor bastard over there in Chicago. I feel for him. But Bears, Seahawks, who are questionable, Lions, Jaguars. I mean, there's 4 right there. And then we mentioned the ones that could be. Again, we don't know now, but Mitchell Trubisky doesn't scare me. Kenny Pickett doesn't scare me. Jacoby Brissett doesn't scare me. And then, to be honest, Lamar Jackson's coming off a year where he's banged up, and there's a lot of weird rumors going around right now. So I don't know. To me, I see it. I am slamming it. I am celebrating. I am betting everything that I can above the 5.5. Now, how much better are they than that? Well, I didn't have to answer that question. All I had to answer was whether or not they pass the over 5.5.
Because Vegas doesn't care. It's just 5.5.
Exactly. That's Miami, it. However you get there. Through hell or high water.
They had Miami at 8.5 Miami. And I got in that. So I go, this is probably going to that will go up. And since has gone up, so I locked it in at 8.5.
Oh,
now I
very
think
nice.
it's at 9. And I could see that going up to even 9.5. So I'm glad I locked it in early at 8.5 because I think 8.5 is a sweet spot for Miami. I actually think here's the problem with Miami in my eyes. I think they're improved. I think they're going to win more games than they did last year. But I don't know if they're a sure thing to make the playoffs because the AFC is so stinking tough.
Oh,
the AFC is so stinking tough. So I think they're going to win 9, 10, or 11 games. I do. But the playoffs still might be tough because the AFC is just so loaded. Thank you. Oh, here's the last one. Whatever happened to Fireman Ed? Is he still around?
He is. Yeah, there was, here's the whole story. I know Dolphins fans who are on the edge of their seat who have been wondering about.
Well, he used to be a Dolphins fan. In his high school yearbook, he wore a Miami Dolphins sweatshirt. And
I cannot confirm or deny that.
To him, well, it's true because the picture's online. And the internet's never wrong. So, and anytime people ask him, he gets like totally upset about that because it's true.
Yeah, I will say this. So Fireman, I just mentioned the stat a second ago. 10 of the last 11 seasons for the Jets have been losing campaigns. And that dates, right at the edge, obviously, of the AFC Championship runs. They have those two wonderful runs. Phenomenal. And then, again, 10 of the next 11 seasons have all been losing years. Fireman Ed, his famous thing, the Dolphin fan he rallies up, does the Jet chant at all the games. Well, while they were losing and him going to the parking lot, apparently he had been getting a lot of extracurricular activity. Now, I will say this right from the get-go. You open yourself up to extracurricular activity when you're Fireman Ed or Boy Green or whoever. You're putting yourself out there. I look at it as an athlete, and maybe that's over the top, but you put yourself on a pedestal, essentially, saying, hey, look at me. I'm Fireman Ed. I'm Boy Green. I'm whoever. You're going to get extra criticism. I get it every single day on every social media I have. And again, to me, I bought in. Now, luckily, I'm a radio host. I have thick skin. I've been doing it for a decade. So, hey, man, say whatever you want. I don't care. But apparently, some things ruffled the feathers of one Fireman Ed, and a lot of Jet fans got initially angry because he walked away, essentially stopped going to the games, and people got angry. But he is now back. He has been back for a little bit now. He was back last season, for instance. But yes, he walked away, and a lot of Jet fans kind of called him out, said, "Oh man, it's thick and thin, no matter what." And that's how I look at it. To me, whether the Jets are 0-17 or they're 17-0. We do the podcast, we do the shows, we do everything, and I'm there and I'm watching every game. I'm not leaving games early. I'm not turning off games if it's not good. I don't care. I have made this decision, and I've been a Jets fan for like 99% of my life, and you know what? I'm in, and there's nothing that's going to change it. So for me, I'm always in. So I understand some of the fans who criticized him because, again, we put ourselves on these platforms, and that just kind of is what it is.
Absolutely. When you put yourself out there with an opinion, I don't care if it's a tweet and you got 1 or 2 followers. Half of those followers are going to love you. Half of them are going to think you're a moron, and they will not be afraid to let you know. When you get up to the podcast level, it's even louder. And then when you're on like radio or when you're writing articles for major websites, it gets even louder. And when you're Fireman Ed on the Jumbotron every game going JETS, you know what? People see you as an extension of the team. So when they're frustrated at the team, they will take it out on you. You probably see it. I see it. Anybody who puts themselves out there in any form of opinion-based show, or even as someone is like the super fan, you're going to get the backlash when things aren't going well. Now, you also get the praise when things are going great, and everyone's going to love you. But that's easy. When things are going bad, you're going to have to take the heat. And Fireman Ed, just haven't seen him in a while. So, Paul, thank you so much for a few moments of your time today. Everyone, be sure to follow Paul Esden on the Man-Child and Boy Green Show on 1260 The Score in Syracuse, the New York Jets digital reporter for theheavy.com, and also the host of the Jetstone podcast. Where can they find you on Twitter?
Yeah, Boy Green 25. They can find me everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube.com. Everything is Boy Green 25. Branding, baby. There you go.
Branding, that's right. You got to have a brand. Paul, thanks so much. We'll probably have you on again in the middle of the season, talk about where things are at with both of our teams, and see what's going on in the 2022 season. Thanks so much, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm looking forward to it. And by the way, fans, because you may say to yourself, why the hell would I follow a Jets fan? Well, I will say this. I like friendly banter. So, again, I'm like Fireman Ed, apparently. Let's have it. Let's have fun. And it's funny that me and you have been doing some fun on Twitter recently, and this is our first show ever doing it together. So I'm looking forward to these future ones. This was a lot of fun. So, again, friendly banter. Let's shoot back and forth. I want us to have good fun. Right, exactly.
It's
And
pro wrestling.
I'm a
We're all
huge
going out
pro
for a
wrestling.
beer afterwards.
Yes, exactly. I'm a major pro wrestling fan. And again, leading up to the week, we're going to be talking trash. And I want those days back where we're both mattering and either one could win the game. And again, the Tyreek Hill juice and all the other stuff that's been added to this, it has a lot of extra. Mike McDaniel, Robert Saleh, and so much has added a lot of sizzle to this quote unquote rivalry recently. And now let's see it. So again, lay it on me, baby. Throw the hate. Love it. Let's have some fun back and forth. And like you said, after we're cracking a brewski and we're enjoying everything that happened no matter what.
Exactly. I mean, there's real problems in the world. This ain't it.
Trust me. Right. That's right. Yeah. It. So let's enjoy, baby.
This is the fun part.
Yes.
Yeah. Just a distraction. Paul, thanks so much.
Appreciate it, pal. See you later.